On today's Locked On Jayhawks, some KU basketball most likelies for the upcoming season, including who's most likely to be in the Bill Self doghouse.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. He's Nick Schwerdt. Thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also find us on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. We're going to be going over some most likelies for some superlatives for the KU basketball season. Who's most likely to be in the Bill Self doghouse? Who's most likely to score 30 points in a game this season? Those kinds of questions. We get into a little bit of KU football talk and a little whose stat line is it anyway. This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, so Nick, playing some fun superlatives is the basketball season is almost here. I mean, a week from Friday, we got late night in the fog. Then the following Friday, we get that KU Arkansas exhibition game, which that one obviously will tell us a lot.
Let me stop you right there.
Yes.
Let me stop you right there, Derek. It is basketball season.
It is
here. At least,
and how much of that is because
of
KU football?
Well, yeah, that's my point. For one fan base, for one school, basketball season has officially arrived.
Okay, so here's some superlatives. I'm going to state a topic. You tell me who is the most likely. Who is the most likely player to be in the Bill Self doghouse this season?
Well, we talked about this last week, I think it was.
But can you fall in the doghouse because if AJ Storr still ends up starting, like, can you still be in the doghouse? I don't know.
Well, the doghouse is not permanent, nor is being out of the doghouse. You can always.
I guess Gerald Vick was in the doghouse, and he, started a lot of games.
Oh, I mean, think about Brandon Green, in, out, in, out. Tyshawn Taylor, most of the guys who go into the doghouse get out and then go back in. It's a very fluid situation. So I don't even know who the close second is. I don't know anything about these freshmen. So personality-wise, I don't really know anything about any of these guys. All I can base this off of is what I know about how some of these guys like to play basketball. And if I'm going off the tape, AJ Storr is a slam dunk answer.
I think you could make a case for Rylan Griffin. I mean, the idea that you have this guy who's a three-point shooter, came from a system that was run and gun, that was, hey, you get even a semblance of an open-looking three, don't even worry about running the offense. Launch it up. We want to play fast. We want to get those types of shots. And I don't know, who knows how that translates over. I do tend to agree with you, though.
Let's clarify here, though, because there's a difference between not playing and being in the doghouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to be in the doghouse, it comes with a certain level of expectations. And there is this idea that you are good enough to be great. And AJ Storr, I think from a talent perspective, he's probably top 2 or 3 on this team. He can score. He's probably one of the best pure scorers in the country, certainly in the Big 12. And when you come in with this idea and mentality of I'm just going to score, that's what I'm here to do. And you look at guys in the past who have been in the Bill Self doghouse, Brandon Green, as we mentioned, LaGerald Vick, as we mentioned, Remy Martin. I think all of those guys had a semblance of that, which is they just wanted to shoot and they didn't want to do all the little things, right? They didn't really know the offensive system. They're messing up plays offensively. They're going rogue, off script. They're not assignment sound defensively. So that is what will get you in the doghouse. It's no, we want to play you, but you're pissing us off by not doing the little things. So now we're not gonna. There's a difference between that and just you're not good enough to be in our rotation. You're not good enough to be in our starting 5.
Right. Those guys don't get any house. So I guess it's better to be in a doghouse than
just homeless.
Be out there. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the case with some of those other guys. I do think it is AJ Storr, though. But I think Rylan Griffin has a chance for that. Okay, who's this is my favorite. Every year there's usually a guy, maybe it's 2 guys, right? There's a part of the fan base that's why isn't he playing this guy off the bench more? Why isn't the bench playing more? And a lot of times it's almost like this simple idea that just oh, if that guy played, all of a sudden everything will be fixed. Who is that guy on the bench who you expect the fan base to be why isn't he playing more? I think last year it might have been Jamar McDowell.
This one's last year was Last year was rough, though, because last year the talent was just not what we're used to seeing. So it didn't really ring true to being like, oh, Jamari McDowell, he's the difference between KU being a title contender. I don't think so. This is really easy for me because it fits the mold of the guys that we've seen in this position before. It's Flory Badunga. It's absolutely Flory Badunga because I go back to Shek Diallo, Alexander, 5-star freshman big man. Why isn't he playing? I don't know, but they never do. They never do under Bill Self. So I don't care how explosive he is. I don't care about how active he is defensively. And this is what's going to happen. Like, to your point, there will be people on Twitter who are going to pull his per 40 numbers, like his defensive, his blocks per 40 minutes. And they're going to say he's averaging 5.5 blocks per 40 minutes. Imagine if he was actually getting run. Yeah, let's imagine. That number would go down. He wouldn't be averaging 4 blocks a game. That is going to happen. That is my lock of the year. That's more of a lock than AJ Storr being in the doghouse. KU's going to lose a game where like TCU or some random Big 12 team is going to get whatever they want inside. They're just going to kill KU offensively down low. Hunter Dickinson's going to be getting blown by, scored over and ones. And everyone's going to start saying, put Flory in. Come on, like this guy is so much better defensively, and he'll get like 6 minutes, and then everyone will talk about it. We'll talk about it on here, and that's going to kind of persist throughout the season because one thing we know is you have to be a special talent to be a big man as a freshman and to get run in year one under Bill Self.
Again, I think that's the right answer. If I want to throw an honorable mention, I could see it being Zach Clements. You had all these glowing comments from Bill Self in the offseason. He's the most improved player from last year and all this stuff. And then he's just like not going to play because he's going to be behind, Hunter and Flory. And people are going to be, well, what's up? Why isn't he playing? Why isn't he getting run? I could see that being kind of the case.
And that's what's so funny too, because those rhetorical questions that you just tossed out there are really easy to answer because he's not as good as the other guys. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. Next one I have up here is best chance to get Bill Self to cry during their senior day speech. So I think the seniors on the roster, I think Hunter Dickinson spoke last year, so I don't think he'd be speaking this year, right? DeJuan Harris, KJ Adams, Zeke Mayo, David Coit. I don't know if I'm missing anybody, maybe some walk-ons.
I'll tell you what, if little Diggy Coit gets Bill Self to cry on senior night, then I think we're in store for a very special season from him. So it's between two guys. It's between DeJuan and KJ. And I could really go either way here. Both of those guys were unheralded. DeJuan certainly more so, less heralded than KJ was in terms of like recruiting rankings, but neither one of them like have prototypical size for the position. Neither one of them are going to be playing in the NBA next year. And those are the types, right? Those are the guys that just like grind it out, fight for everything, play the right way. Can we go with, can I go a duo answer? Can I say they both make Bill Self cry? Because I think that's on the table.
Yeah, KJ has the mom story. DeJuan, just, where he was. I know he has kind of a crazy story with upbringing and everything. I think it would be DeJuan, but yeah, I could see both kind of being the case.
Well, because he's got a thing for point guards. He's got it. Like Bill Self has a type. We know the type, whether it's Frank Mason, Devontae Graham. Like that seemed to be sort of his soft spot.
This one, and then we'll finish with the 30-point one. There's always a point in the season, whether the season ends up being good or ends up being bad, that like KU hits a rut and it leads to freak out time, right? And again, sometimes it ends up being a proper freak out because they end up just not being good after it. But many other times, I would say a majority of the time, they end up moving past it and being just okay. Is there a point in the schedule? I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you. I have it in front of me.
I'm pulling it up now.
Read it for you. Is there a point in the schedule that you could see being the freak out mode? Because for me, I noticed 2 right away.
Freak out mode point of the schedule. Well, I see a stretch here where KU goes, and this is the right time. Like to me, it's more about what time.
Usually it's like January, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, and then I think the opponents match up well with the time of the year. You got to go on February 1st. You got to go play at Baylor, come home, play Iowa State, and then you go on the road to play K-State. That's 3 games in a week against like 3 major programs in the Big 12. So that's my number one off first glance.
Yeah, and then like a week after that, you're at Utah, at BYU, which on its own, I don't think either game is very tough. But like you look at it, and a lot of times the Pac-12 teams, when they'd have to do that 2-mountain road trip with the altitude going at Colorado, at Utah or whatever, they'd lose one of those. A lot of the times they get upset, like Arizona's of the world. So that's one of them. I know this one isn't January, but I could actually see this one being the one. So you play Duke at the end of November. Then you get back home against Furman, should win that one. You're at Creighton. I mean, that's going to be a very losable game. Creighton's got a very good team. Then you're at Missouri. If you lose at Missouri, your rival, after you have lost at Creighton and against Duke with Cooper Flagg, you're going to be losing 3 of 4 in the non-con. I don't expect them to lose all those games, but if you do, that will lead to a major freak out at that point of the season.
Yeah, that's one thing that's so weird, though, is because like we always get so fired up for these big non-con matchups against blue blood programs, but at the end of the season, we never talk about them. Like we're never talking about the Champions Classic. And if we do, it's like a throwaway comment. Oh, remember so-and-so had 22 in the Champions Classic win over Michigan State. It's like, I hardly remember that. But if it happens in conference play, it starts to kind of make you think, oh, maybe that's just who this team is. Like you have enough time in the schedule to bounce back from a rough stretch in November. You do it in February, that's when it starts to kind of raise the alarms a little bit.
All right, most likely to score 30 points in a game this season.
I think it's AJ. I think it's AJ Storr. Hunter's weird. Maybe it's because you're a big guy. I know he does shoot threes, but he doesn't get into the line enough. I think that's one of the things. It's like, can you just get really hot from three, hit 6 threes, hit 7 threes, and then get to the line 10 times? Hunter, on paper, should be getting to the line a ton, and we talked about this last season, but for whatever reason, as many touches as he gets down low and as much as he is going through contact, he just never gets to the front line, and you got to do that to have like a really special offensive night.
Any chance it'd be like Zeke Mayo or Ryland Griffin just goes off from 3? Like they hit like 7 threes in a game or something like that. And I mean, that's still.
I think I would say Zeke more than Ryland. Zeke is, and I think that this is a learned skill that can be translatable. Like, yes, I understand that Zeke's competition last year, much worse than Ryland's competition. But getting to kind of run the show and be the guy for a couple of seasons, I think that's a learned skill of just not feeling like you need to defer. Like as bad as Nick Timberlake was last year, he did have a couple, like he wasn't afraid. Like he wasn't afraid to go out there and shoot. And there was that game, I think, against UCF where KU actually lost. I think it was UCF or maybe it was West Virginia. They lost the game. He was the only one doing anything offensively. So Zeke has that. Like he had some really big offensive outings, and if he gets hot, then I think he just lets it fly. So I would put him ahead of Island, but I still think AJ Storr is my number 1.
All right, little KU football talk. Whose stat line is it anyway? Next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and with the lowest price guarantee, your Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. There's really cheap tickets out there for the KU Houston game. There's not as cheap tickets, but a fun event to go to for the Royals game tonight. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, continuing on, little KU football that I wanted to touch on here. Obviously, you drop another game, now 1-5, the loss to Arizona State. Is there a world where we look back at this start, where they have lost 4 one-score games, where their point differential is still well in the positives, I guess well-ish in the positives, that we look back on this, and whether it's in a year from now, whether it's at the end of the season, we just say, yeah, you know what, they were just super unlucky. Like they've had 6 straight one-score losses now dating back to last season, or do you view it as they have a fatal flaw, that there is something seriously wrong of why they can't come through consistently in these one-score games?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of luck, but I don't think that will ever be the big conclusion, whether it's at the end of the season or next year. Because I think winning is a skill. I think knowing how to pull out. I don't like the idea that we just chalk everything up to luck. Like, oh, you just didn't have things bounce your way. No, winning is, look at the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs, yeah, they're a championship team, but they're a championship team because they know how to win these close games. And it goes from the top down. It's not just a quarterback thing. It's not a play calling thing. It's not just a head coach, game management, clock management. It's everything. It's everything. And this team does not have that. Now, why they don't have it, I don't know. But I also think the idea that regardless of if there is luck involved or not, the ripple effects of this start and losing these games are going to be very wide-reaching. And it's kind of scary, I think, if you're a KU fan or if you're involved with the program. Maybe it is some bad luck. But that bad luck is going to cause, I don't know how many, but a non-zero amount of players to not come to KU. Like, right? Like recruits who are between KU and another school, and they're going to look at that and say, maybe I don't want to go there. People are going to lose their jobs. Fan support's going to dwindle. There's going to be less money coming in. So with those results coming from what's happening on the field, I think it will be difficult to look back on it and say, oh, a little bad luck like seriously derailed the trajectory this program was on.
What betting odds would you need right now if I told you you need to bet on Kansas to make a bowl game in 2025?
What were their odds this season?
I mean, this year the over-under win total was 8.5. So just to make a bowl game probably would have been like minus 300, maybe even more than that. But I mean, you're going to be losing, 30 whatever seniors coming into next year. You do have that good recruiting class. Obviously, wait and see what happens with the transfer portal, both coming in, coming out.
5-1? I mean, plus 500?
I mean, they were like 5-1 to make the playoff this year.
Yeah, but it's college. You can see teams swing in big swings in both directions. So I guess in that regard, if we're just saying that Kansas is a bad team this year, maybe they could swing back in the other direction next year. But this is not a team that's inspiring a ton of confidence right now, and especially knowing that nobody's going to be back. None of your starters that we thought were good. Maybe there are upgrades, but you're not upgrading at running back. You're not upgrading at either one of your starting cornerback positions. The only thing you could talk me into is maybe because of the way that Jalen's been playing this year is that whoever is your starting quarterback next year could be a slight upgrade. But I don't think that would be enough just to say that like, oh, well, Jalen's no good. Well, the next guy would be marginally better, but you still are losing so much experience across the board. I think no matter what you thought about this team, we all knew there was going to be maybe a little regression coming next year. And with the way that they're playing, I don't know what the argument is. I don't know what the argument is that like, oh yeah, this could be a much improved team next season.
I think the hope is just that it's one of those like addition by subtraction things, not that the subtractions are good players, but it's just like, I don't know, something's wrong and you just need fresh faces. I don't know.
As I talk through that answer, I realize I'm probably being a little hypocritical here because to act like this team's issue this season is purely like a talent issue is a little short-sighted.
Yeah, it's not.
There has to be like a major step back, reassess, where did we go wrong from the coaching staff and from the athletic director to say like, what happened? Why did you guys take such a massive step in the wrong direction? And I'm sure with Lance, that's going to require a lot of looking in the mirror and saying like, okay, we thought we had good players. We thought we had a good scheme, but clearly there is not a winning culture. And the idea of like going back to when Lance was hired, and we always talk about this with new coaches, it's like establishing a culture, establishing an identity. We thought he'd done that 2 years. And then in year 3, that culture completely disappeared. How and why did that happen? That to me is more important to figure out than like who's going to be your starting quarterback in 2025.
All right, let's finish up. Whose stat line is it anyway? This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Did you know you can get Kansas 11-1 to win the national title in basketball? You can get Hunter Dickinson at plus 550 to win the Wooden Award for National Player of the Year. You can do that and bet on any of the action, whether it's MLB, college football, NFL upcoming this weekend. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Finishing things up, little whose stat line is it anyway here. We're going to go over to KU basketball. As you said, to open the show, it is KU basketball season. According to KenPom, so I don't think KenPom counts like games like the Chaminade game, which like some other sites do. Anyway, it doesn't matter. KU's top 3 in defensive rebounding rate a season ago were Hunter Dickinson, 27.5%, Johnny Furphy, 16.3%, Kevin McCullar at 15.7%. Obviously, Furphy off to the NBA draft, McCullar off to the NBA draft and graduation, Dickinson is back. So based on last year's college basketball stats, so this isn't just players at KU, but the players that they brought in who were at other colleges, but obviously doesn't count the freshmen coming in since they weren't playing college basketball, who had the highest defensive rebounding rate of any player on the 2024 to 2025 team based on last year's stats besides Hunter Dickinson.
I don't think Rylan Griffin was a strong rebounder at Alabama. I don't think AJ Storr was a strong rebounder at Wisconsin. So now I'm just going off the board here. I'm going to say just because of the competition and his role, I'm going to go with Zeke Mayo.
Ding, ding, ding. You are correct. Zeke Mayo, a 15.7% defensive rebound rate, which was what Kevin McCullar had last year. Again, different competition. AJ Storr would be next at a 12.5%. And then nobody else, returning players, the transfer they brought in, are even into the double digits. Is that scary?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's scary. I mean, going like when Bill said that he thinks AJ Storr needs to be a top offensive rebounder in the country.
Best offensive rebounder, yeah.
That tells me that like there's an emphasis on rebounding right now because they're saying, oh, none of these guys want to do it. It's not that they can't. It's not that they can't be a rebounding team because I think with like Bill's always said that with defense and rebounding, it's not about skill. It's about like, do you want to? Do you feel like being a defender? Do you feel like rebounding the basketball? So I'm sure with all these dudes coming in here thinking like, oh, I'm going to be the man. I'm at Kansas. I'm going to have a good year. Going to go off to the NBA. It's like, hey, guys, let's all take a step back here and maybe reassess some roles here. So, yeah, that's going to be one of the big questions coming into the season is like, okay, you're going to get better offensively, but what about all the other stuff?
Yep. And if you're playing too big basketball, you better be a good rebounding team, but we will see. All right, he's Nick Schwerdt. I'm Derek Johnson. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast. See you next time with LOJ.